Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of True Lies. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I wasn't paying as much attention last episode because I would have noticed, but I did not know that James Cameron directed True Lies. I did not know. I had to look. I was like, wait, as James Cameron, Terminator and Avatar, James Cameron, super well. I was like, interesting. I had no idea. Because I saw his name as an executive producer. I mean, I'm sure he has like nothing to do with the show, but his name is probably there just because of the connection to it being based on the movie. So I'm sure like he gets executive producer credits on it in that regard. So he probably has very little to do with the show, but still, I just, that's so fascinating. Either way, putting that aside, obviously adjusting to this new dynamic between Harry and Helen. Obviously she's going through her spy training. It's not going that well. I felt it's so bad when like Luther was having to choke her out. He was like, "Hey, Harry, I want everyone to know that I was just doing it because that's the typical protocol when it comes to training." He's like, "I get it, I know," but it's just like Helen even had to tap out, and she's just like, "Oh, that kind of sucked. That didn't go well." So, but she kind of gets thrown into the deep end. Not as deep of the deep end as she could be, because their boss was kind of like, if I could, I'd send her to like, what was it, North Korea with like, I think she just said Korea. I don't know if she specified which, but she was like, Korea with just a knife, and kind of throw her into the super deep end. But basically in this job, they're going to Madrid because they're going to meet up with Yamina. She's she cracks code and stuff like that. And so the fact is they need her help trying to stop, like, what was in some kind of sale of some kind of, like, viral weapon or something like that. Problem is, Harry has a connection with Yamina. It predates him and Helen, but it's still not the easiest thing to be like, yeah, there was kind of something there. He's trying to say there was nothing there, but Gibb is like, come on, dude. The fact of the matter is we had to hide in your bathroom, which also doubles as a safe room, which is kind of nice. Like a high-tech safe room where just like, there's computers, a keyboard, like showing you like cameras at the house, but also it like kind of probably like muffle sound. And so I love that he put the bathroom in safe room, and he was still whispering, and Gibbs like, okay, if you got nothing to hide, then why are we whispering? He's like, I'm not, and because it's like, right, I just got at the doghouse. I threw like Helen into the deep end by me, finding out that their entire relationship was there was a lie based around it. I did not know that's also where the series title comes from, and I'm sure maybe it comes up in the movie more. Maybe it's one of those things of, they said it. They said it. They said the title. Like they did it in the intro, so I don't technically count it as like them saying it in the episode. But the fact of the matter is that it's about like, these aren't really lies. They're true lies, because it's almost like lies of admission of like, yeah, you have to tell lies, but you're also somewhat telling the truth while you're also lying. So I was like, I did not know that's where the show's. It never crossed my mind. It's like, it's a very befitting title considering, because the movie it's based on is an Italian movie. I'm curious I should have done better research. I'm curious, like, does the Italian title, the Italian movie, does it translate to roughly True Lies? Because I know sometimes that ends up happening, but other times they probably just gave it its own name. I'd have to look into that more by the next episode. But either way, putting all that aside, it's also getting to the point like their kids, at least the son is pushing more. The daughter isn't as much because she wanted the alone time. I was like, no, shut up and let mom and dad go so I can go do my thing. Which I love that, it's like, right, we need to put Miss Myers back on it. And it's like, Harry was reluctant to do it because he's done it before. It's like, yeah, she was caught vaping, but she did it one time and she ended up stopping. So it all worked out in the end. It's like let kids make their own mistakes, but, sadly, Helen wasn't down for that, so she had Miss Myers look into it, spying on the kids, which we do, because my biggest question last episode with Miss Myers, I'm like, are those actually your cats, or did you, like, just take images? It's like, nope, she's got cats around, so she actually, I don't know if that's just her playing into the cat lady neighbor next door type of thing, or that she just happens to be a top-class assassin who just really happens to like cats. I'm curious. That could kind of be, like, her quirk to some extent. And I do love, and I think it's super adorable, them getting filled in throughout the episode about, like, their daughters happening. It's like, she bought this top. It's like, like, how tight is it? It's like, normal normal. And what was the phrasing she used? Basically, it's like, hey, her boobs aren't hanging out. But I forgot what the exact wording Miss Myers used. She put it in a very elegant way of like, did she say? Like the cookies are still in the jar or something like that? She might have said something like that. So it's like, right, the whole point is not to focus on that too much because we got a mission to take care of. But if we're taking care of this mission and all this stuff, he's like, great, now I've got this running through my mind that my daughter just was going off to some party after like some dude we don't know ended up picking her up. So, but what I really like about this episode too is that it's not just Harry with kind of a secret. So does Helen has one as well because they end up running into her ex Harold, which it's like, you had an ex who has the same name as me. It's like, oh, come on, you're overthinking it. She's like, yeah, you kind of get like that. He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, you kind of get like, a little weird when you find out that people are smarter. He's like, oh, so you think he's smarter than me? It's moments like that reminds me of his character. What was his character's name? Oh, God, from he has like moments like that. Kind of reminds me of his character from Reba because his character from Reba was kind of a goofy idiot, but he has like goofy moments like that. I mean, obviously that's him leaning into like that's the comedic elements of the show, but it's just like, oh, so you think he's smarter than me? It's like, no, see what I mean? This was exactly what I'm talking about you getting weird about it. But the moment Helen found out about Yamina, it's like because it's like, oh yeah, we should probably know what everyone looks like, the bad guys when they ultimately showed up, and it's like, oh, shouldn't I know what Yamina looks like? Not she probably, there's no photos of her. It's like, no, show me. And it's like, okay. And then like, there's all these photos from like the like dinner date that her and Harry had. And it's like, oh, her kissing him on the cheek. I'm like, well, that's a very European like way to greet someone. And then it's like her holding up an oyster to his face. He didn't eat it. He didn't take it because he knew how, he was like, oh, that's going to be weird. And also he picked her up just to put her in like a air vent shaft or whatever so she could get out. It's like, it's nothing, but it's still kind of like, okay, especially after Harry had given her all that grief. That's why Giff was almost like, yeah, it's kind of hypocritical for you to get all upset about Harold when there's the whole Yamina, God, I'm butchering her name, Yamina of it all. And it's like, yes. So neither one really told each other about everything, even though he knows about all her other exes. I think I was about to say, like, did you know about those exes because you spied on her? But she didn't say anything. So I guess, like, in the past, she talked about her exes. And I guess Harry's talked about his or something like that. Maybe he just never, for obvious reasons, he never brought Yamina up. Because it's like, yeah, that was before you. And it's like, yeah, this was before him. But it's like, yeah, her and Harold, they have so much in common. So a little bit of that inferiority kind of, like, kicked in and stuff like that. So doesn't help that Harry pulled off a badass action move where, like, yeah, there was an armored, bulletproof, like, vehicle chasing after her on a bike. Harry, like, shoves a bike underneath it and explodes. So it's like, yeah, you kind of went above and beyond for her. It's like, yeah, literally performing, like, such a dangerous act for her. It's like, no, I'm doing it to protect the mission because she has information we need. That's what it's all about. Helen's like, yeah, sure, of course. And the moment the bad guys were tracking their way back to Harry, I was like, oh boy. And it's like, right, Helen, get ready. All you have to do is point and shoot at bad guys. And the moment they were taking so long, I was like, there's got to be some twist here. And I was like, oh my God, the other Harry, isn't it? And yep, they grabbed Harold instead of Harry. I was kind of thinking the entire time, the fact is they showed up wherever Jimena was, I was wondering if that was kind of all a ploy and she was going to end up secretly being a bad guy. It's like, no. I mean, the whole point was they're after her because they know she's the only person that can crack the code, and they know that her and the CIA have kind of worked together in the past, so that's why they were gunning after her. But I still was wondering if, like, this was some ploy and she was actually the bad guy. I was kind of still, even at the end, waiting for that twist, but it's like, no. I mean, because that's the thing, like, it's going to come up sooner or later because that's typically how these spy games work. It's like, yeah, sooner or later something's going to happen and you're going to be working with someone that you can't necessarily trust, and then it turns into a thing of betrayal and stuff like that. I just assume that just because that's typically associated with any spy-related thing, but we'll see if this series ends up going down that route or not. But either way, I love that Helen had to go be the one to meet with Jimena, and turned into a whole tussle, which, hey, Helen held her own. Yeah, she's still a trainee, but she held her own in that regard. And I was like, okay, so how is Helen going to get out of this? Because it's like, right, when you're caught in those situations as an agent, you're taught to do whatever you need to get out of it. So I was like, what is she going to do? Wasn't expecting the full blown. I mean, it wasn't a full blown wet willy because she spit on her finger first. Like you have to get saliva on your finger first, then that's makes it willy. So I guess it's just a willy because it's not a wet willy, or maybe it's considered a dry willy. Either way. Kind of gave her the opportunity to be like, yes, I'm married to Harry. I know that you like clams and champagne and like very like high slit dresses or something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. It's like, no, cool. So this place has a lot of importance to you and Harry, because it's like, yeah, it doesn't seem like just a safe house. Hence why Harry was slightly reluctant to send her there, because it's like, yeah, apparently, Jimena even said like, oh yeah, I was in love with Harry. It's like, yo, I was like, that's complicated. But it's like, no, because it's like, right, I kissed him and waited for him to come back, and he told me he met someone, and it's like, it turns out it was Helen. I was like, oh, that's sweet. And it's like, and she's like, yeah, I mean. And it's like, I'm glad he left me for a spy, obviously left me for another spy. It's good to know that, because I mean, he, almost thought like maybe he left me for he could have, left me for a suburban wife who's just raising kids and goes to yoga. It's like, ha, right. And even she had to be like, so are you absolutely sure he said this particular phrase? It's basically the place that they ended up meeting. She had to make sure like, I'm not confusing this for someone else. And at the same time, that's all going down. They had to go rescue the kidnapped Harry. And it's like, whoa, so you're a spy. Well, Harold, I should delineate that. But it's like, Harry having to save Harold. It's like, well, he's like, I don't want to die on a mission saving Helen's ex. So, ended up saving the day. It's like, wow, you're a spy. And it's like, oh, so you're you must, I mean, it's no wonder Helen broke up with me. He's like, Harry's like, wait, what? She broke up with you? Because that was a whole point of contention of like, oh yeah, like who broke up with who? Because that's very important. But it's like Helen broke up with him. They broke up with their respective people in this regard, because in her case, it's they spoke a lot of the same languages, but he didn't speak the one language that she was looking for, and that's the language her and Harry speak. And I think that was like the full, like, that spark, that love. And I was like, oh, that's actually really, really, really sweet. And both of them finding out from each other, being like, oh, I heard some stuff from Harold. I keep doing it. I'm trying to delineate between, I heard some stuff from Harold. Oh, well, I heard some stuff from Jimena. So it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, it all worked out. Like, it's like, oh, we spent all this time being jealous. It's like, yeah, we were with each other, and it's very meant to be type of stuff. And then, I'm a sucker for a good love story. So I'm like, oh, that's really sweet. So also, it's interesting. There was some part of back of my mind that was when, Helen, I was literally about to say Nikki. I think I did it last episode where I want to say her character from She-Hulk. But when Helen showed up, I was almost expecting Jimena to be there, and I almost thought like, oh, could we get like a Harold and Jimena thing going on? But Jimena ended up like burning everything and leaving, because it's like, right, she has to kind of disappear, considering this terrorist group or whatever was tracking like her phone and stuff, so she has to kind of go underground for a while. So like I said, at the end of the day, it all worked out, despite obviously the heavy amount of chastising that he got from Luther and Maria. Luther being like, come on, think about it. At the end of the day, she settled for you. And Maria being like, oh yeah, Harold, despite him being like super handsome and successful and knowing all these different languages. I was like, man, when you have friends like that lifting you up, he's like, yeah, because even Harry was like, yeah, I'm just so glad I had you guys support during this. Like, it's such an important time right now. So I really like that. So Helen's first official mission is a success. It all worked out. It did kind of, like I said, I talked about it a little earlier, but I did think it was kind of interesting where she was like, right, doing what she was doing in this mission, it felt nice because it was like, hey, this is something I wanted to do, but I'm getting here based on secrecy and lies, and the fact is now I'm lying to the kids, and the fact is I almost crumbled when it came to a 14-year-old asking me all these questions about what are we doing, like if I'm going for this conference thing, why is dad going, and Harry's there to sell computers and they have to kind of keep up this lie. It's like, but once again, it's still early days, so they haven't quite figured this all out. They're still, figuring everything out. It's going to be a while before they're going to be like a more well-oiled machine. So when they do get back, Miss Myers did give them like some a drive with some info and pictures, and it's like, right, is there anything up there we should be concerned about? It's like, if you're asking if there's going to be stuff up there that's going to make you uncomfortable, then yes, which sounds like a probably caught their daughter. It's probably their daughter making out with home dude, and it's probably going to be like all that stuff, you know. It's like, no, we're going to keep her privacy because that's what we should do. We should trust her. We don't need to see what's on that drive. And I love that the last shot of the episode is just them leaving it by the nightstand, but then they turn and both look at it because it's like, yeah, they're going to. So I'm curious to see if that ends up being a carryover into next episode, where it's like either we see them watching it or maybe they're still debating about watching it. And it's like, what do you do? Because it's like, if you tell your daughter what's what, she's going to know you're spying on her. So how do you handle that? And even when you, most likely, when we do catch up with them, they probably did see it. So it's like, well, what do we do with this information? Do we try to catch her in the act lying? Or like, how are you going to handle that? That's definitely going to be so interesting to see where all that ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. I'm excited to see what the next mission and a new crazy adventure they find themselves on next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.